north. You see those officers there very slowly and methodically pushing that line of protesters, hopefully off the freeway and onto surface streets.
Yeah, thank you, Gabe. Let's bring back in Bruce Thomas, our law enforcement expert. It seems like they are just taking one step at a time, Bruce, slowly pushing back on this group of demonstrators. I don't think they want to start anything, get too violent, go too fast. They are slowly, methodically making their way to clear the surface. We saw yet another flashbang go off above this crowd. But talk to me about what the mindset is of these CHP officers as they are now face to face with these demonstrators. They want to get them off the surface, but they don't want to start any violent confrontation.
You're 100% correct, Jory. What they're doing is they're negotiating. Look, you made your point. We've got to open this freeway up. We're going to use a skirmish line to slowly, very slowly, push you back off the freeway. We don't want to use force. We don't want to take anybody to jail, but we want you to comply with our request.
Yeah, and it does seem to be effective right now. We have not seen the necessity for batons. We see some pushback here. It looks like some folks are just kind of dead weighting their bodies up against this crowd, forcing those officers to push them back. But they are moving back. They are locked arms now, arm in arm, and don't want to be removed, but they are slowly pushing back. So the officers will take a couple steps, gain that line, reset, move forward again, and hopefully they don't want to start any major confrontation here. Again, all of this is playing out on the streets of Los Angeles. We are awaiting word from the mayor of this city. Karen Bass is set to address her city any moment now. We were told around 4:30 was the time to get ready for her to speak. We have not heard from her as of yet, but we are awaiting word from the mayor, again, excuse me, in direct confrontation with the federal government. President Trump kind of name-checked her personally last night on his Truth Social outlet, his social media outlet, writing, this is last night, if Governor Gavin Newsom, that's a favorite of the president to write it that way, of California, and Mayor Karen Bass of Los Angeles can't do their jobs, which everyone knows they can't, then the federal government will step in and solve the problem. Riots and looters, the way it should be solved. So he's saying the problem was riots and looters. Said it will be solved the way it should be solved. He was also recorded on camera today at a press briefing being asked about a couple things with what's playing out here. Rules of engagement for the National Guards members who are now federalized under his control on the streets of Los Angeles, what their rules of engagement. They're carrying around, these soldiers can be inserted into war, and so they're carrying the weaponry as such against citizens of Los Angeles. What the rules would be for them to employ those deadly means. The president just said we want to keep peace. He was asked about the proclamation that Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth put onto social media, saying if the violence continued, then members of the U.S. Marines would be deployed against U.S. citizens. That can only happen under use of the Insurrection Act. And the president today was asked what would be deemed an insurrection, and he neglected to answer specifically. So here we go. That looks like a smoke bomb thrown on the surface of the 101. And let's go back up to Gabe. Those demonstrators now kicking that smoke bomb back towards the officers. It's like a macabre game of soccer with this thing right now. But they are making a move trying to get these folks off the freeway.
Yeah, that's, I can honestly say I've never seen a soccer game between protesters. And oh, that is one protester being taken into custody. One of those CHP officers got behind him as he was going in for that kick and just pretty much tackled him. And that's what CHP is doing here. With that soccer game going on with this tear gas canister going back and forth as those CHP officers try and kick it back into the crowd, and then the crowd kicks it back. You're seeing CHP kind of slowly pick off some of these protesters that get a little too close or get a little too aggressive in their movements. And there you see another CHP officer again kicking that canister into the crowd, and a protester now throwing it back towards the CHP officers. So this is kind of a dangerous situation here, because you basically have projectiles being thrown back and forth as these protesters now, at least with that tear gas canister, that has put a little bit of distance between that skirmish line, as you could see that person being taken into custody earlier, kind of wrangling with those CHP officers there just out of frame. CHP with that tear gas, obviously, it's not something you want to breathe in. It causes your eyes to burn. It causes you to cough. So that pushed back the protesters just a little bit. Those CHP officers wearing full gas masks, so they're able to kind of tolerate it a little better. If you don't have a gas mask, if you just have any other kind of mask, you're going to be getting the full effects of that tear gas canister. So that's what's creating a little bit of that buffer. As you can see, that CHP officer in the middle, he's trying to, as Bruce Thomas was saying, he's trying to negotiate with some of those protesters in a very, kind of matter-of-fact way, saying, get back, put some distance here, and continue moving off of the freeway. As you can see, this one individual waving an American flag, continuing to yell at some of the officers. I have a feeling if he gets too close, some of those CHP officers might pick him off as well. And that's going to be the process. You saw that skirmish line that was on the opposite line of the freeway. It has now crossed over the center median, and they are doing this very coordinated approach to pin these protesters off the freeway. And, you see someone else being... and someone else being taken into custody right there, and very quickly. And there's someone. Okay, it looks like another CHP officer grabbing another fellow officer there. Probably got a little too close for comfort, but you could see just how different the picture looks than what it did 10 minutes ago. Earlier, you had a very wide semicircle of these CHP officers, and now they are narrowing in. They are pushing all of the protesters off of the freeway, which is the goal.
Yeah.
And they are doing this in pretty quick order, and anybody who is getting a little bit too close or a little too aggressive, they're just picking them off and arresting them right then and there.
Yeah,
and this is all part of the plan.
One by one. Gabe, thank you. I want to bring in Sergeant Daniel Kiy with the California Highway Patrol, who joins us on the phone watching the CHP execute this clearing of the 101 freeway. Sergeant, thank you for joining us. Can we talk about what's happening right now on the 101?
Yes, sir. Right now, we currently have our CHP special response team that responded to the area to assist with getting the protesters off the freeway. Accessing state highways, it's dangerous. It's not the right spot for a protest, and it puts the protesters, the motorists, and our officers at risk. And we are going to move to get them off the freeway and make arrests. If officers start to take objects and are getting hurt, or other people are getting hurt, it's not going to be tolerated.
Yeah, and we have seen that several times now, these officers coming under attack and taking several people into custody. Can you tell us a little bit about the training in situations like this? We have seen tremendous restraint from a lot of these officers who have been under attack for much of this day, facing these people off who are screaming at them, throwing things at them, and yet maintaining control and trying to de-escalate. How important that is and what you're seeing in terms of execution of that training.
Yes, our special response team goes through additional training, and we are put through situations like this, and this is what separates us is the professionalism. We're going to stay calm in these situations and use the appropriate amount of force when necessary to effect an arrest if we have to. But we fully support everyone being able to voice their First Amendment rights in the right location, and we will support that. But on the freeway is not the spot for it.
And we're seeing it play out once again, another person taken into custody. A lot of times in these situations, we see unified command go into effect. Has that happened? And how does the presence of National Guard troops who have been federalized kind of change that as it plays out here today?
The CHP is always prepared for mutual aid to other law enforcement when it's needed, and that's just what we go based off. We are the state police, so if there's other areas that need help, we are going to send resources if it is requested through the proper channels to do that.
Sergeant, can you tell me how it's going to play out tonight once these protesters, these demonstrators are taken off the freeway, how it's going to be ensured that they won't make their way back onto the freeway tonight? Will that be CHP? Will that be local? Once you get off the freeway, it turns back to city's jurisdiction?
It's going to be both. It's a fluid situation. CHP is there. We are going to protect any state facilities and our roadways and our highways. And if anyone attempts to take over the freeway, we're going to take swift action to get those roadways back open and keep everyone safe to continue on with our mission of providing safety, service, and security.
Yeah, I know this operation has only been happening for a little bit. Do you have any reports of injuries from any of your officers from anything today?
I don't have those numbers right now, if there was any, but there's always that possibility that officers may get injured, and we hope to prevent that. We hope that people do not throw items at our officers, and that it's just done peacefully, and they go to areas that they can voice their opinions in the right spots.
Okay. Sergeant Daniel Kiy with the California Highway Patrol, thank you so much for helping us out here.
Thank you.
Thank you. I know it's a busy day for CHP, law enforcement in general, as once again we are seeing people take to the streets of downtown Los Angeles. This is now day 3 of unrest in our city. We are awaiting word from LA Mayor Karen Bass. She is set to hold a press briefing at any moment. We were told it was set to happen at the bottom of the hour, and we are approaching 15 minutes past that point. And we will see what she has to say. But, you know, anytime the mayor at this point is now going to step in front of a camera, we will likely see her side by side with, you know, smoke bombs and unrest and flashbangs and arrests and officers under attack. So no matter what the mayor says, this is all playing out under her watch, which has been a point of focus for the president and those who work in his administration, saying she is unable to maintain control in this city. I'm sure she will be asked about that tonight when she speaks to the media, if it's opened up to questions about why and how this was able to happen in her city. These are thousands of people, so obviously only so much can be done, and demonstrations are a vital part of our country. Protest is protected by our Constitution, and it should happen, but obviously it should not turn to violence, and that has happened several times in several different locations here today. So as we await word from the mayor, we are watching the California Highway Patrol slowly push these demonstrators back up the on-ramp from the surface of the 101 freeway southbound, and they are being hit with pepper spray and smoke bombs and flashbangs as they want to get these people back off of the roadway, the 101 and the on-ramp. Gabe Santos has been watching this from overhead from Air 7 and has an eagle eye of what is playing out, because that crowd is now gathering pretty thick on the on-ramp, Gabe.
Yeah, Jory, and that's kind of what CHP was intending on doing. This is the CHP Special Response Team, and they are trained in these SWAT tactics and tactics on dealing with civil unrest and the like. And, you know, we've all seen protests through the years that involve people blocking freeways, and they often last a lot longer than what we've seen here today. We've seen a very quick response from this CHP, again, specifically the Special Response Team. They arrived here quickly, and they very quickly, as we saw, made that half circle around these protesters and slowly and methodically kept walking forward and pushing these protesters using smoke canisters further and further up this off-ramp and back onto surface streets. So ideally, CHP will get the freeway open in a pretty short order, because there's a, you know, this is Los Angeles. A lot of people are on these freeways on a Sunday afternoon. So that is the goal, to get these freeways open and you know, take on the protesters from there, because LAPD is also dealing with the other side of these protests near the federal building.
Hey, Gabe, I do want to alert everybody as we wait to hear from LA Mayor Karen Bass that I know a lot of people are turning on Channel 7 on this Sunday, waiting for Game 2 of the NBA Finals between the Pacers and the Thunder. That is going to happen at the top of the hour. We are going to turn to national programming, and you will be able to watch the game. We will continue our coverage of what's happening in Los Angeles, streaming on our ABC7 Los Angeles app. You can stream on our website, abc7.com, and you can find us on social media and make your way to our stream as well. So again, abc7.com/live will get you coverage of what is happening in downtown Los Angeles as we continue to follow the unrest and the demonstrations that has been playing out here for the last 3 days. Thousands of people converging on downtown Los Angeles. It began as several different demonstrations, all gathering into one large mass, which has once again broken up into several locations, both at the federal building, which is where the bulk of the activity we have seen this weekend, 3 straight days happening at that federal building at Alameda and Temple. This, however, is happening at, I believe it says Spring Street and the 101 freeway, and the Los Angeles Street overpass is one overpass down. So there are people on both, looks like 3 different overpasses watching what has played out here. Demonstrators taking over the 101 freeway. We see CHP officers right there on the right side of your screen in tactical gear. They are continuing to face attacks from above. Projectiles continue to be thrown at them, and they are responding with flashbangs, trying to disperse that crowd. A large plume of smoke emerging from that crowd as these officers are doing their best to get these folks off of the road surface. On the left side of your screen is a live look from Air 7. It looks like things might have stalled a little bit. The CHP officers have slowly marched these people off the roadway, up the on-ramp, and it looks like they have slowed to a crawl here as the large crowd is gathered behind that skirmish line. It's tough to get that many people to move in a direction which they don't want to go, and the officers don't want to start any kind of panic by bull rushing through that crowd, which could be catastrophic, people getting trampled and the like, and they do not want to see that play out. But the crowd is continuing. Look, another group here has splintered off, and they are making their way down, is that Alameda past Union Station? I'm just trying to get my bearings. Yeah, that's Los Angeles Street. Down the hill is Union Station. So there's Union right there. Gabe Santos, how many different groups can you spot from up above, Gabe?
About 3, I would say. You have a group that's making their way up north on Los Angeles Street. I think they've gotten wind of the situation going on the 101 freeway. And this is a group that is on the north side of the 101 freeway, on the Chinatown side of things. And it appears, Rob, I don't know if you could zoom back in on that. It appears that they are starting to move, well, at least it looked like a group of them was moving in one direction or another earlier. I'm not sure if there are people in the back of that truck making announcements, trying to rally the crowd. That might have caused some movement in a direction towards the truck. You also have all those people that were on the freeway that are now, a lot of them off the freeway, and now have to move in various different directions. So you have a crowd of people north of the 101 in the Chinatown area. You have the crowd of people right here on the Aliso and Los Angeles Street intersection. Most of those people were on the 101 freeway earlier, and you have this crowd of people south of the Federal Building near Temple and Alameda. This is where that motorcycle incident that we've been talking about a couple hours ago, that's where that happened, where we had reports of a couple of motorcycles. You could see there one of them still lying on the ground. A couple of motorcycles apparently made their way towards the skirmish line. The words that we were hearing from CHP is that from those LAPD officers in the skirmish line, is that those motorcycles crashed into the skirmish line. Unknown how fast they were going, but we do know that at least 2 people were taken into custody with charges of assault with a deadly weapon on an officer. So those are pretty serious charges, and 2 people again taken into custody for those. We do know that the officers that were hit by those motorcycles, a couple of them were injured, but they were treated at the scene and are now stable. So that's some good news in terms of the conditions of anybody injured here at the scene. And now back on the 101 freeway.
And you can see
this is the Los Angeles Street Bridge. Yeah, Jory,
yeah.
The Los Angeles Street Bridge on that Aliso ramp to the, let's see, those are the southbound lanes of the 101 freeway. And this giant crowd has kind of come to a halt right there. I would say that's probably a couple hundred people. And CHP has indeed kind of stalled there for now. CHP, in effect, has succeeded at their goal. They closed both sides of the 101 freeway, made this very coordinated approach to pinch off the protesters and get them back onto surface streets. So that's the goal of CHP at least, and it'll be interesting to see if CHP gets them fully off the ramp and get them onto Los Angeles Street, and then they just stop there, or what further role CHP may have in this entire situation. They may be content with just blocking off the ramp and then sending the rest of their crews home. They have a lot of CHP officers from the CHP Special Response Team that are here at the scene now. Those are those special CHP officers that are specially trained in these SWAT tactics, and they have the riot gear, they have the gas masks, and they have the tools to deal with large crowds. As you can see there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people So there you can see 6 people currently in CHP custody. We saw these people kind of being plucked from that skirmish line as some of them got a little too close, got a little too, maybe the CHP officers thought they were getting too rowdy, and then those people were immediately taken into custody. CHP will probably have a paddy wagon or another large vehicle to put these folks in for processing and then taken to jail after that.
Yeah, we saw those people being marched down the ramp and likely being taken to the CHP vehicles, which are either under the overpass, protected under there, and they'll load them up and then drive them off the surface of the 101. But some order is being restored here to the freeway, and excuse me, and we will see how this plays out. But there is a logjam there on the on-ramp at the bottom of your screen, as the CHP is continuing to slowly press this crowd back to the top, up to Los Angeles Street or Main Street, and make their way back and clear the entire roadway. Again, we are waiting word from LA Mayor Karen Bass. We expect to hear from her in some kind of press briefing here in the next little bit. I do, in the meantime, want to read a post from former Vice President Kamala Harris, who many are thinking might be the next governor of the state of California. She posted to social media, quote, "Los Angeles is my home, and like so many Americans, I'm appalled at what we are witnessing on the streets of our city. Deploying the National Guard is a dangerous escalation meant to provoke chaos. In addition to the recent ICE raids in Southern California and across our nation, it is part of the Trump administration's cruel, calculated agenda to spread panic and division." The former vice president continuing, "This administration's actions are not about public safety. They're about stoking fear of a community demanding dignity and due process. Protest is a powerful tool, essential in the fight for justice. And as the LAPD, mayor, and governor have noted, demonstrations in defense of our immigrant neighbors have been overwhelmingly peaceful. I continue to support the millions of Americans who are standing up to protect our most fundamental rights and freedoms." A mention there of being mostly peaceful. I guess that's an unmentioned condemnation of violence, but not a direct condemnation of that violent and tactics that we have seen from these demonstrators, many of them today. We have started to see many taken into custody. A lot of projectiles, bottles, and as we saw from ABC News' Matt Gutman, rocks and chunks of concrete being hurled at these officers who are trying to clear the situation. We did see rocks and projectiles thrown at vehicles, law enforcement vehicles that have been making their way through. The back window of a Suburban, we believe a federal vehicle, was shattered as we were covering this live today by people who were simply throwing things at any vehicle that passed. On the right side of your screen is a confrontation we saw on the surface of the 101. This is the southbound 101. A sad game of kick the can between CHP officers and those demonstrators with that tear gas canister. In fact, you're going to see one of those, if we play this out, the last person to touch this winds up being arrested here, taken down by an officer who was trying to kick that canister back towards those officers. So that was one of, I'd say, at least a dozen people from this particular group who has been arrested, taken into custody, and removed from the situation. And this has continued. Face to face up this on-ramp, the CHP slowly marching these people back and away from the 101. They want to regain control of the roadway. The officers are still in tactical gear down on the surface itself, getting ready for containment so they can hopefully open this back up to vehicle traffic, which has been stopped now for at least an hour as we have been on the air here. The northbound side was open for a time as the southbound side was overtaken, but now both sides have been shut down for some time as the CHP is trying to regain control. All of this is happening as large crowds gather in other portions of downtown, including outside the federal building, the Roybal Detention Facility, where detainees have been brought throughout this weekend. And we have seen 3 days of unrest there, demonstrations and confrontations, and that is where we are looking right now. Gabe Santos in Air 7, really quick before we hit the top of the hour. One last check with you on what we're seeing at the federal building there.
Yeah, Jory, we're keeping an eye on the scene at the federal building and the scene on the freeway. The scene at the federal building appears to be pretty static, and it has been since that motorcycle situation that we saw where 2 motorcycles breached the skirmish line. 2 people were taken into custody there. The motorcycles may have hit a couple of officers there and caused minor injuries to officers who were treated at the scene, and those officers are in stable condition there. We believe those were LAPD officers. So we're keeping an eye on the scene at the Federal Building, and we're keeping an eye on this large scene on the Aliso ramp to the 101. Large crowd there. It looks to be a couple hundred people, but CHP has been successful in their efforts to clear the protesters off the 101 freeway. So unknown how much longer the 101 freeway will be closed, probably for another few minutes as CHP maybe gets these people further up the off-ramp and completely onto the ramp. And this may, you see another person taken into custody there as a couple things are thrown at officers, and that person may be getting a little too pushy with the officers. That's that person earlier with the green cap with the American flag. So one person being taken into custody there, a little scuffle happening a little further up the ramp here, and in situations like these where you see projectiles being thrown at officers and things being thrown around, sometimes you see those smoke grenades being thrown out by these CHP officers because they have those at the ready to forcefully push these crowds back as you see things get a little bit pushy, a little bit tense.
Okay, here we have LA Mayor Karen Bass again. NBA Finals will continue on ABC7. We'll continue to cover this on streaming.
Right to protest, that's their First Amendment right. But people should also exercise that right peacefully. We do not want to play into the administration's hands. We're working with officials, we're organizing resources, but what we're seeing in Los Angeles is chaos that is provoked by the administration. When you raid Home Depot and workplaces, when you tear parents and children apart, and when you run armored caravans through our streets, you cause fear and you cause panic. And deploying federalized troops is a dangerous escalation, but we need to be real about this. This is about another agenda. It's not about public safety. There's clearly no plan, and there is clearly no policy. I want the people of Los Angeles to know that we stand with all Angelenos, no matter where you were born. The First Amendment right gives you the ability, again, to protest peacefully, but it does not give you the right to be violent, to create chaos, or to vandalize property, and that will not be tolerated. So I call on all Angelenos to continue expressing your right, your anger, your outrage, but to do it peacefully. And I just have to say that all of you were there Friday. Everybody knows what happened Friday. A workplace, several workplaces were targeted and raids took place. Now, in the beginning, the administration said they were just looking for dangerous felons, violent people. It's hard to say that that's what they found at a workplace or in a Home Depot parking lot. When this happens, it terrifies people. It sends a sense of fear and chaos in our city. And you well remember a few years ago in the last administration that kids were afraid to go to school, parents were afraid to go to work. This impacts all of our city. You can't terrify the workforce, and then expect for people to get the jobs done. So if you think about a father that went into a factory and now his family doesn't know where he is, the detainees have not been allowed to speak to legal counsel. That is a marked departure from what has happened in the past. When you think of a mother that might be working in a household, taking care of children on another side of town, that impacts that family as well as her family. And so this is something that I think should not be happening in our city, and I join with the governor in appealing to the administration to rescind the order to federalize the National Guard and allow the National Guard to come back under the control of the governor. So with that, we can open it up for questions. Yes.
We're going to start with Lolita and then we'll go to Chase.
Mayor, these protests that were demonstrations, I should say, did start out peacefully. You've been here since
Right.
in the morning.
Right.
But then they scattered and people were moved
Right.
around. Where is the LAPD in terms of being here to be able to deal with that and maybe stop them before they get on the 101 freeway?
Sure. Well, I think that basically they were overrun. But what is happening now is that the freeway is cleared. The California Highway Patrol, as you know, is in charge of the freeways. So they have moved all of the protesters back. They still might be there, but they are beginning to be dispersed. but LAPD is on the perimeter, so LAP is actively involved. You know that there were hundreds of protesters on the freeway and thousands of protesters off the freeway. So there is a joint collaboration going with the CHP, the LAPD, and then frankly the National Guard. But you also know that the National Guard is deployed to protect federal property. So there is a National Guard troops in Westwood at the federal building and also here downtown.
Next question to Chase.
Chase?
Mayor Bass, have you reached out directly to the federal government, or is this you doing so right now with the media here? Have you tried to reach out?
No, my disappointment is I've been talking to the federal government for days. I was hoping to prevent this situation from happening. I was trying to encourage the administration that if they deployed the National Guard in Los Angeles, it would create a sense of chaos. It's the last thing our city needs. Our city is still trying to recover from the wildfires. And you just think about how so many people were impacted by that. And that's an example of where the administration was helpful. And to go from that situation to where we are now is just really tragic. And I think it's so unfortunate. It's the last thing Los Angeles needs.
When you say you've reached out to the federal government, do you have any?
We are listening to
No, I
LA
did
Mayor
not.
Karen Bass address her city amidst unrest in Los Angeles. If you're continuing on ABC 7 on air, we will switch things over to the
Well, I'm worried about everybody. I'm worried about members of law enforcement. I'm worried about the safety of the people who are peacefully protesting. I'm worried about the businesses that might get vandalized. I'm worried about the vandalism that took place around the federal building. All of that. We do not need to see our city torn apart. And the idea that the federal government that should be assisting us is a contributing factor, I think is very tragic. When I see the protesters, I know that so many people are affected by this. Their families are affected by this. People are terrified.
How do you think that vandalism impacts the overall message of the protest?
Well, I mean, first of all, I think protests need to be peaceful, period. And anytime it deteriorates into violence, that is a problem, and it absolutely messes with the overall message.
Next question right here in white.
Yeah, hi Mayor. George with Reuters. My question is, can you share a little bit about the conversations you've had with the governor, and how long you expect for the National Guard to actually be in Los Angeles?
You know what? Thanks for asking me that, because we're hearing all of sorts of information. We're hearing that raids could continue. We're hearing that the National Guard is going to be here. So it's uncertain. But that's exactly the problem. Because we don't need in this city to go to sleep tonight and wake up in the morning and find out about people running through Home Depot parking lots being chased by ICE officers, or people going to work, or children at school. So we don't need any of that in our city right now. Our city is trying to heal. Our city is trying to rebuild. Our city does not need to be torn apart with a provocative measure from the federal government.
We're going to go right here, and then we'll go right here.
So, Mayor, the reality is people seem to still be getting violent. How do you plan to deal with that as we move forward?
If people get violent, if people break the law, they will be subject to arrest and they will be held accountable. It's as simple as that. So peaceful protest is what is needed. Peaceful protest is a part of our American tradition.
Right here. Mayor, last night the U.S. Attorney seemed resolute that these raids would continue regardless of what's happened over the last 2 or 3 days. In your conversations with him, has there been any kind of attempted compromise or somehow lowering the temperature, at least till things cool off locally if they want to continue, or are they just doing it regardless of how everyone else feels?
Well, I mean, I think what we see now is they're doing it regardless of how anyone else feels. My conversation with the U.S. Attorney, though, was not focused on that.
We're going to go with Frank?
Yeah, I have a question.
Oh, hi, Frank.
It appears that the LAPD is cooperating with ICE in this operation outside the Metropolitan Detention Center. They moved in, there was a peaceful protest. The LAPD moved the people back using flashbang and less than lethal munitions. Comment on that, because
Sure.
the LAPD is not supposed to be cooperating with ICE.
Sure. Well, first of all, I'm not sure that LAPD was involved with the flashbangs. But anyway, let me just say that what happened there is that when one branch of law enforcement says they need help another branch of law enforcement is going to respond and is obligated to respond. And so the minute that protest left the federal building, then that's when LAPD were involved. So the cooperation that you're referring to, I believe, is the cooperation around coordinating with ICE in terms of raiding workplaces or arresting people who are undocumented.
Right here in the back.
Hi, what's your exact understanding of the timeline for how long the National Guard is going to be here? How long the raids are going to continue? Are there going to be daily raids?
I have no exact timeline. I cannot tell you that. That's part of the problem, right? We do not know. I have heard a variety of days and weeks. I certainly hope that this is over. The last thing this city needs is civil unrest, and the last thing this city needs is civil unrest that's provoked.
Quick follow-up. So I've seen LAPD fire point blank foam bullets, rubber bullets into the ground, but in some cases directly at protesters. Can you speak about what kind of orders they're under in terms of handling peaceful protesters?
I can't in terms of the specific orders that are being given by the chief or the other commanding officers.
So Mayor, will you be speaking then to Chief McDonald?
I'm going to speak to him in the next few minutes.
Okay, great.
Yes,
And so
I'm
what is
leaving
then
from
the
here
plan?
to meet with him.
Great. What is then the plan for tomorrow? Because let's say presumably this does not end.
Right. Well, you know, I think one thing is that because our city has always had a very robust immigrant rights movement and infrastructure and institutions that have been around for several decades, there is a history of having peaceful protests here. Now, you know, like any crowd, if we're talking about after an athletic event, everybody celebrates. There's always a handful of people that tend to be at the end and tend to hang around and might get into mischief and violence. But that's not the people who are putting on the protests. I tell you that to say that when those protests have been organized, they've been organized in a proper way. The problem is what happens at the end, and that's one thing that is difficult with crowd control, whether it is a political protest or whether it is a football game.
Did you say you talked to Tom Holman?
Yes, I did talk to Tom Holman.
What did he tell you?
Well, he just listened. I mean, the main thing he said was he appreciated that there was a call for no violence. I'm not exactly sure what was expected, but, you know, I was encouraging him not to deploy the National Guard. I knew that the order had been given. The president had signed the order to the governor that he was federalizing the National Guard, that 2,000 troops were going to be deployed, but that didn't mean that they would actually be deployed onto our streets. So my conversation with him was trying to encourage to prevent the deployment. Obviously, that did not work.
And
Mayor,
just to be
you
clear,
said
are you
the
having
mayor's
a
gonna
meeting with the police chief and anybody else, or just the police chief?
The police chief, the sheriff, and the governor.
Quickly, Mayor, you're talking about peaceful protests. We're hearing the noises outside as this crowd is getting closer and presumably more violent as they're coming up through the streets here. I know it's nice to talk about peaceful protests.
That's not peaceful, what was happening. It's not peaceful for people to be on the highways. It's not peaceful for people to throw rocks or bottles. That's not peaceful.
So then how do we reconcile the difference? Obviously, there's frustration with the Trump administration and the feds, but as LAPD and the Sheriff's Department try to distance themselves from the actions of these immigration actions and work being done, they're against authority in a lot of ways. They're standing outside City Hall, which is your office. It's not necessarily against you. How do you distance yourself, but also kind of try to keep it peaceful at a time where it's anti-authority?
Well, and let me just tell you that I don't think there's any equivocating on nonviolence. And if you are going to entertain violence, if you are going to try to take over a freeway, then you are going to suffer the consequences of doing that. I don't think that LAPD, the sheriff, and certainly not myself, are not shying away from statements like that.
Mayor, do you want to provide some
National Guard mission is going to be?
I'm sorry?
Any details about what the National Guard mission is going to be within LA, whether it be deployed?
Well, what I know right now is that the mission of the National Guard is to protect federal property and the federal building, which is why you have only seen them there. You have not seen them out in the community or anything like that. And just in terms of, to close, to wrap up, I just have to say that, again, our city has been through a lot since the beginning of the year. And now thinking that there is a large percentage of our city that is terrified, that is not going to know if they go to sleep tonight and they go to work or they go to school, will that be the last day they do that? Will that be the last day they see their family? We can't have this in our city. Los Angeles is a city of immigrants where 50% of the population is Latino. percentage of the populations are from Asian countries and from all over the world, and we embrace all Angelenos. It doesn't matter where you came from or when you got here. But the most important thing right now is that our city be peaceful. And so protests and expressing your, fears, your beliefs is appropriate to do, but it is just not appropriate for there to be violence. And I don't want people to fall into the chaos that I believe is being created by the administration completely unnecessarily. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, everybody.
You have been listening to Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass address the situation playing out in her city. As she has been speaking, we heard our reporter Tim Caputo, who asked some fantastic questions of the mayor during that. As that was playing out outside of the City Hall and the surrounding downtown area, we have seen some things happening at the bottom of your screen from Air 7. That is a Waymo car now on fire. It looks like a lot of those cars have been targeted by the demonstrators, tagged and destroyed, damaged. And again, that one is now on fire. Never a great situation. I believe all of those fleet are electric vehicles, and we don't want to see, those batteries are, once they're exposed to air, you can have a really violent explosion. Gabe Santos has been watching what has been playing out here for some time. During the mayor's press briefing, Gabe, what have you seen?
Well, Jory, we've seen a very rapid escalation of things here. We have both Air 7s over the scene here, one of them on a couple of Waymos, one of them that's on fire. I'm personally working to get eyes on where that Waymo is because my attention has been focused on the scene at Alameda and Temple, where we had a number of mounted units from LAPD try and make a move towards City Hall on Temple, and they were met with a lot of fireworks activity. One officer reporting Molotov cocktails, unknown if those were actually Molotov cocktails or whether that officer was maybe confusing the fireworks with something else. So those mounted units from LAPD were trying to make a move towards City Hall on Temple, and they were met with a lot of protesters that were reacting with aggressive behavior. So those LAPD units actually backed away on Temple and backed up from those protesters. You can see those mounted units right there just trying to regroup and reassess the situation, because as soon as they started coming towards City Hall on Temple, near this very intersection, this is going to be Los Angeles Street and Temple Street, they were met by some aggressive behavior by some protesters. And you can see that mall area on the bottom left corner of your screen, this open park space. A lot of the surfaces there have been tagged by protesters. Even when I got on the scene here a couple hours ago, those walls were bare, and now they have been tagged, and a lot of graffiti has been applied to those walls. So those protesters have been pretty busy on some of these other streets near the Federal Building, while our eyes were focused on the situation on the 101 freeway. Both lanes on the 101 freeway are still closed right now, but CHP has pushed the majority of those protesters off of the freeway and onto the Aliso on-ramp to the 101 South, and CHP is continuing to very slowly and methodically push those protesters up the ramp. They kind of hit a stalemate with some of those protesters on the ramp, and we saw a couple of minutes ago some of those smoke bombs being launched, and that created a lot of smoke and really kind of pushed the protesters further back and away from the freeway. It'll be interesting to see what role CHP will continue to play there, and this is my first view of the Waymos. These are going to be, it looks like these are on the north side of the 101 freeway on Los Angeles Street, and from our other angle, from our other Air 7, we were seeing that one of them was actually on fire. I don't see flames at, I do see the flames further to the right, but we're going to hold on this shot right now because we can see one individual breaking windows on those Waymos, and there's that other Waymo that's on fire. And all three of these, I think I counted 4, have been completely hit by graffiti, a lot of paint, a lot of words and statements being placed on these Waymos. And this is quite an interesting scene, something that you wouldn't see maybe in the riots of 2020 and before that, because we didn't have these automated vehicles that are kind of easy to corner and easy to stop, and protesters appear to be taking advantage of that and using these automated vehicles as maybe billboards for their message, and unknown what you know, the Waymo's response to this is going to be, do they just kind of shut down and stay put? Obviously, when they're set on fire, they're probably going to be, you know, completely destroyed.
Yeah.
But these are owned by a company. They're not owned by a specific individual. So at least, you know, it's not a sole individual that is now at a loss for a vehicle. You have these corporate vehicles that are probably insured, so that's at least one bit of good news. But this is obviously not anything we like to see. We don't want to see things burning in the streets. We don't want to see all these acts of vandalism that we're seeing now taking place on the Chinatown side of the 101 freeway. And we're seeing a lot of these protesters move northbound on Los Angeles Street. I'm not sure if that was from the activity that we saw a little bit closer to Temple and Los Angeles Street, where those mounted officers from LAPD kind of clashed a few minutes ago. I'm not sure if that's what's spurring some of these protesters to continue northbound on Los Angeles Street, or if they're just kind of moving forward of their own will. This collection of Waymo vehicles, I think this must have happened in the last 20 minutes or so, because I had eyes on this section of street before Mayor Bass started talking, and this
struggle as well.
Yeah.
So
it sounds like Tim Caputo has found a new location. Let's see where he is and what is going on as we search really for the bulk of this crowd. That's the 101 South that is still shut down. The 101 North is moving freely again, and what a shot from Tim Caputo's camera location. Tim, tell us about what you're seeing now.
Well, full disclosure, we didn't actually move locations. We were kind of double parked and had to move the van to let some people out, because once we got to this location, what's ended up happening, and no surprise here at Los Angeles Street, cars cannot go down. So they're pulling this kind of U-turn to go back down to Alameda Street here towards Union Station. So we are in the same spot, a pretty safe distance away. I can tell you, there are rowdy elements of this crowd. That's why I'm kind of keeping my head on a swivel as well, because some of the anger pointed at the media, some of the anger obviously pointed at law enforcement, at the mayor's office, whomever they perceive as potentially a person of authority at this point. So we're just kind of watching our backs as well as we watch what's going on ourselves. But, as you guys have mentioned too, is this car trying to make a U-turn here, this Range Rover red one in the middle of the street. These cars are still burning, and the vast majority of people standing on the sidewalk here and standing even in the street here, mostly just getting video. It does seem like some of the attention has moved away from the burning vehicles as this crowd is now moving back towards the federal building, across the 101, back over to Los Angeles, Aliso, and even Alameda Street, essentially where the protests we've seen the last 48, 72 hours have been focused. Obviously, this is where it began, but it eventually kind of bleeds out and filters out into the adjoining and adjacent streets around here. And that's what happened in this area when these cars were set on fire. It does seem, at least where we're standing right now, while it does seem from our angle there are a handful of people standing on the street, the crowd is actually moving farther away across the 101, potentially back towards that federal building. It's tough to tell from here, and frankly, I'm not going to try to get any closer to show you a closer perspective from it, but it does seem like, just from the visuals here, as the fireworks continue to go off. The crowd is starting to move away from these burning vehicles. Hopefully, maybe that gives the fire department the opportunity to get in here and try to douse these flames before any gas tank explodes or anything gets worse here. It remains to be seen because we haven't seen a whole lot of law enforcement or first responders in this immediate vicinity. And understandably so, obviously, with folks so angry and things on fire and fireworks going off, it is not exactly the safest place to be at the moment.
I like how you said that you are keeping your head on a swivel. We saw someone pull up right behind you. He was on a bike. But what is the general feeling of the crowd there? Are they confrontational? Are they saying anything to you?
They're angry. They're not necessarily angry at me. They're not necessarily angry at the media. They're angry. They're angry at what's been going on the last couple of days. They're angry at this immigration policy that they protested back in February. Remember back on February 2nd when protesters at the time got onto the 101. That was the kind of initial set-off point for a lot of these folks. And now that what we've seen over the last 24 hours, I feel like to a degree it's emboldened them. You have the crowd, you have numbers, you have people that are upset, that are frustrated, that are scared, and they want to have their voices heard, and they feel as though the only way they could do it is be as loud and be as disruptive as possible, and they are doing exactly that. I can tell you the vast majority of people here just want to be part of the movement. They want to be part of the resistance. That doesn't necessarily mean they want to be part of assaulting officers, of vandalism, of burning cars, or of anything like that, but being part of it oftentimes means you get awfully close to it. And I think that's what's happening with some folks here, is that you might not want to be part of that car fire, but guess what? When you drive by on your motorcycle and do some burnouts around it, you're part of the action as well. And that's what's happening right now. This is kind of a show of force, a show of resistance, and it's still going strong.
Yeah, and as the mayor alluded to, and as we know, there are legitimate demonstrators out there. There are also people who, after a sporting event, just want to watch something burn. And so there is a distinction between what is happening right now, whether these cars burning are truly, along with it's not a peaceful demonstration, but whether they're actually out there to make their voices heard, or whether they're just out there to take pictures of themselves in front of a burning car once the crowd is out of the streets.
And Jory, it's an interesting point too, because you mentioned the mayor talking about how she wants it to be peaceful and she doesn't want things to go sideways or anyone to get hurt. I think it's an interesting point because a lot of folks out here have told me this is sad. This is not sad because of what the people are doing. They said it's sad it's come to this. They've reached the boiling point. They're mad and they want to do something about it. And I think that's what the mayor kind of alluded to as well, is the fact that she's not necessarily blaming Angelenos for this. She's blaming what led up to make Angelenos do this. And I think that's a subtle but important difference of the folks out here as well, and what the mayor was trying to convey, in the sense that the Trump administration's immigration policies, the ICE raids that have been happening in the last couple of days here in Los Angeles, brought this city to its breaking point, and that's why Angelenos are doing exactly this. And I think that's the sentiment by and large. I've only talked to a handful of people kind of on the outskirts here who said, this is sad. I hate to see it come to this in the city, but something needs to be done, and this is how they're lashing out.
Right, we've seen those ICE raids play out. LA Mayor Karen Bass alluded to the fact that one of them took place at a Home Depot. We saw some in the garment district, and some factory workers were taken into custody. It is said by the Trump administration that their focus is on the dangerous, the violent, those who have criminal records, who are in this country illegally. But a lot of people in this crowd feel like that is not the focus of what is actually happening. And while some dangerous and violent people are being taken off the streets, there are also upstanding members of society that are being swept up in this as well. And that was not supposed to be what this what has happened. In fact, I heard an affiliate in our nation's capital this weekend who was a Trump voter, who is a U.S. citizen, who was swept up by ICE simply because he looked like he might be here illegally. And once they saw his ID, that it was a real ID and he was a citizen, they let him go quickly. But that is what is happening here under some of these ICE missions.
These stories that you're hearing, it's just insane. And I think Tim really said it best. All of what you just mentioned and stories like that, it's really brought the city to its breaking point. So this is the result of anger, the tension, the frustration, and we are seeing it. And you can see the city, I forgot what that was, but we saw it's just graffitied all over the city. We are seeing graffiti and not nice things either. So a lot of cleanup in downtown LA.
And Governor Gavin Newsom, who is now at odds with President Trump and the federal government over the federalization of California National Guardsmen and women, keeping active on social media, responding to actor James Woods, who posted a video of 2 police cars on fire with the quote, "If I hear one more leftist shill in mainstream media utter the words peaceful protest, I'll throw up," to which the governor responded, "This video is from 2020. And so there he is, active, going back and trying to prove his point that the president was wrong to bring in the National Guard against his wishes, which is something that typically we do not see happen. The normal order of things is that the governor of a state would request the federalization, some help from the federal government, and bring in the National Guard. That did not happen here. President Trump took it upon himself to federalize 2,000 members of the National Guard last night, put them into use today. The governor has made a move now to retake control of those National Guards members. And again, we talked about the history in our country of something like this happening. Presidents have federalized National Guards members. The last time I think it's happened was the civil rights era, when John F. Kennedy federalized National Guards members in the South to allow black students to attend schools who were being met with resistance by the governor, George Wallace being chief among them, and other local governments that weren't allowing federal law to be executed, and it was directly harming citizens. This situation is not that.
Right. It's so different, and it's so hard to see. Like, okay, usually history repeats itself. Let's look back. Let's see what happened. We can't really do that with this because this is, again, it's not going in the right order. 2,000 National Guard troops are deployed here. And yeah, President Donald Trump went over Governor Newsom's authority, and he brought them here. So it's just really difficult to see how this is going to turn out.
Yeah,
we can't predict it.
And we've heard from ICE about their the execution of some of their activity the last couple of days, and some of the violent, dangerous criminals and people that they have taken into custody who now face deportment. Our Tim Caputo, who you've been talking with there on the ground there, spoke with U.S. Attorney Bill Escalation this weekend about some of those movements. Let's hear more. Tim, what did the U.S. Attorney tell you?
He was resolute that these ICE operations will continue regardless of this, regardless of what happened yesterday, regardless of what happened on Friday as well. It was an interesting take because we've heard a lot of people talking about how they want us to stop. The U.S. Attorney said absolutely not. This is their job and their duty. They say they were going after criminals. They say they were going after people who have immigration judges in their final warning to leave the country. He also said, full disclosure, if we run across somebody who is here illegally, we're going to arrest them too. Now, how much of that is going after people with those warrants and how much is the other, we don't exactly know, but he said regardless of what is going on, those operations that happened in Paramount yesterday, he said they carried them out. Despite that entire protest happening for the better part of 12, 15 hours. And he said they will continue to happen here in Los Angeles. He was undeterred by everything that's going on. In addition to the National Guard, he says they've mobilized Border Patrol to protect the federal buildings here downtown. An obvious mobilization of federal officers and federal agents to protect the work that they are doing and protect the people who are doing that work. I had asked him what he thought about this resistance, about people being frustrated, about people being sad, that's all that's going on. And he essentially said, it is what it is. We're enforcing the law. And he said even more emphatically that if you try to resist those officers, if you try to impede those officers, if you try to assault or actually assault those federal agents, you will get arrested and you will be prosecuted. And we saw that yesterday. We saw it to a smaller degree on Friday. And I could imagine that's what we're going to see here as well as these protests have continued all day today. It was an interesting perspective from the U.S. Attorney as well, because obviously he sees it from the other side, is that they are federal agents carrying out these immigration work and the protection of those officers and those agents who are not only carrying out the work like yesterday in Paramount, who are mobilizing at their kind of joining where they were all meeting to start doing that work. And he said there was an assault on officers and they won't stand for that. So it's an interesting point of view that we maybe not necessarily have heard as much over the course of the weekend because of the presence of so many people who are frustrated and fed up with these ICE raids. He said, I wouldn't even call them raids. They are arresting people who have have warrants out for their arrest. He didn't even like the description of calling it an ICE raid. I think the vast majority of this crowd would disagree with that.
Right, and that's why we keep hearing from people like Governor Newsom and the mayor for people begging them to be nonviolent. Because as we look at these scenes playing out, and the scene we see behind you, Tim, who looks bad when you look at a city like this? If you're on the outside looking at Los Angeles tonight and you see that cars on fire in the middle of downtown, who looks bad? Is it the federal government? Is it Donald Trump seeing this situation? It looks like chaos. It looks like violence. He's not looking bad when they see scenes like this. The general public is looking at Los Angeles asking what is going on? What is the mayor doing? What is the governor doing? And so they can almost use that response as a positive as the federal government continues their confrontation with local authorities here in California and Los Angeles.
And Jory, I've spoke with a lot of people over the course of the past 3 days, from people protesting here on Friday night to Compton and Paramount yesterday to, again, people in this general vicinity today. And I've had friends, I've had family on the East Coast and across the country ask me, is it as bad in Los Angeles as it sounds? Is it as bad as the president is making it out to be? And the answer is simply, it's not as bad as that, but it's not great. And they asked, what's the temperature here? People are fed up. And that's what I've told each and every one of my friends and family members of what it's like here. People are fed up, and this is their way of getting out here and boiling over their frustration and putting it out in the streets. And when you had those ICE raids on Friday that happened in the Fashion District, that happened in Westlake, that happened in South LA, the people who live here, Angelenos, feel like it's an affront and assault on them. And they're fighting back, and this is the way they're doing it. Not necessarily fighting back with punches, although in some cases, of course, they're throwing fireworks like you hear there. They're throwing rocks like they were yesterday in Paramount, but they're fighting back in a way that they know how, which is getting out in the streets and letting people know that they don't believe this is okay. So while these ICE raids will continue, you would have to believe this is going to continue as well, because as I mentioned several times here, frustration has boiled over, and the folks out here say they're sad, they're mad, and they finally need to rise up and do something about it.
Right, and we heard from the mayor today directly blame President Trump and his administration for what has played out in Los Angeles these last 3 days. And it's not just the mayor. Conservative writer Bill Kristol, who obviously is an anti-Trump conservative, but wrote on social media, you know when things were pretty quiet in LA? Before ICE started arresting residents who were bothering no one and going to their jobs, and before DHS and guard troops showed up and made the situation worse. Of course, Trump and Stephen Miller want the situation to get worse. And that is what he's alluding to, what I was just talking about, where who looks bad when you see scenes like this? Cars on fire and civil unrest all across Los Angeles. Is it the demonstrators who are doing this that look bad in the eyes of the nation? If you're trying from a PR perspective, who's going to look bad in a situation like this? It's the demonstrators, it's the leaders in Los Angeles who are in power as this is happening in their city. And so as we see this play out, I see at least 4 of those. I'm guessing all 5 of those Waymos have now been set ablaze and are now burning down, literally burning to the ground, melting into the pavement on Los Angeles Street. This has been going on, this unrest, since this morning, really since Friday. This is day 3 of unrest and confrontation across Los Angeles and LA County. It began on Friday with some of those ICE raids, or as the U.S. Attorney wishes them to be referred to as immigration enforcement, at a Home Depot, taking some day laborers. The federal government says they're not just day laborers, they are violent criminals. That may be the case. They did put out some of the people they have arrested, and not all of them were violent criminals with criminal records in their past. Saturday, yesterday, things began in Paramount. We thought it was outside another Home Depot. It actually was outside another Home Depot, but that was not the purpose of this location, why it was chosen. Across the street in Paramount, there was a DHS facility where authorities were staging more actions to be taken yesterday. That demonstration grew violent. It was pushed down the street into Compton, where, again, things turned violent. A car was lit on fire. Firefighters and law enforcement came under attack from thrown projectiles. And then it continued last night here at the federal building in downtown, the detention center, where people were being held. Back to today, another demonstration began in Boyle Heights, walked their way across
dirty.